Now tell us, why are you running for governor of Missouri?
Liz, I'm running for governor of Missouri because our government is broken. I've never run for office before, but we have now in Jefferson City a class of political insiders, career politicians, well-paid lobbyists whose backwards priorities have been running our state into the ground. And when I travel all over the state, people say to me they want real leadership in government. They want a government that works for them rather than one that works for the insiders. And so as somebody who's tough enough to take on Jefferson City, as somebody who cares about real people, we're running for governor because we know that we can turn this state around.
Now, the current governor of Missouri is a Democrat. How do you as a Republican plan to connect to everyday Americans in Missouri, even though they're used to the policies of the left?
I'm going to connect to everyday Americans because I'm one of them. As I said, I've never run for office before. And when I go around the state and I talk to people, they say they want politics to be an honorable profession in which proven leaders engage for a short period of time. And they're tired of this constant lifetime game where career politicians, because of their cowardice and their self-interest, they shrink from facing the hard problems that are all around us. They want somebody who's tough enough to take on the culture of Jefferson City and who cares about them and their families and who's courageous enough to bring real results and solutions for them, their families, and their neighbors.
All right, let's talk about those real results and solutions for a moment. Let's get a little more specific about policies. If you are elected governor, 4 years down the line, at the end of your term, what do you hope that you can look back and say you've accomplished for the state of Missouri?
Yeah, well, what we're going to do, Liz, is we're going to turn Missouri around. We're going to build a Missouri that people are proud of and a government that works for real people. And very specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to create an economy with more private sector paychecks and bigger private sector paychecks. When I travel around the state of Missouri, I meet with hundreds of people, and they are looking for work. But those jobs are gone. They're in Indiana, they're in Georgia, they're in Texas. We're going to bring those private sector paychecks right here to Missouri. Another thing that we're going to do very specifically is we're going to restore trust in government. I'm going to come in and we're going to ban all gifts from lobbyists. We're going to close the revolving door between legislators and special interests, and we're going to insist on term limits for every statewide office holder. And finally, Liz, one of the things that we're going to do, as you and I talk here tonight, we have in Missouri over 65% of our kids in fourth grade are not reading at grade level. And those kids aren't getting a fair shot at the American dream. So we're going to take Missouri from one of the last states in the country in education to one of the best states in the country because that's what our kids deserve and that's what their families deserve.
They certainly do. Now let's focus for a second on the education. That's not just a problem in the state of Missouri. That's a nationwide problem that our school children are lagging behind where they should be, behind grade levels. How specifically do you plan to solve this issue? Are you thinking of targeting the fact that teachers aren't being paid on merit pay? Are you thinking about charter schools? What is your specific plan to reform this system?
Yeah, so Liz, one of the things that we have to do here in Missouri is you have to fight against Common Core. The federal government should not be setting our curriculum. They should not be choosing our textbooks. We need to make sure that every kid in Missouri and every kid throughout the country, especially kids here in Missouri, kids with special needs, kids in failing school districts, that they and their parents can choose the school that they most believe in. So we have to create more choice for our kids and for their parents. And when we do that, and when we empower our kids and our teachers and our parents, kids in homeschool, kids in private school, kids in our public schools, when we do that in our communities, we find that we get much better results, and that's what we've got to do here in Missouri.
And I love that you have a specific way of being able to communicate that, because I feel like all politicians get up and say they want to reform education. They want to give the kids what they deserve. They want our education standards to be higher, but very few people can stand up and articulate exactly what it is that they will do to improve our education system. And I think you did that beautifully right here. Now, for a moment, let's move on to ISIS.
So much, Liz.
Let's move on to ISIS and to terrorism. So on Sunday, as you know, President Obama finally called the San Bernardino shooting a terror attack.
Finally.
Finally. I've been saying all week that that's something that everybody else in America has known all along. The president was just slow on the uptake here. Now, in this speech as well, Obama presented a 4-step plan to defeat ISIS. What was your reaction to that plan?
Well, my reaction was, what plan? I mean, the fact is, Liz, the president, the commander-in-chief, did not present a new plan. This was the largest terrorist attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. And we were looking for a president who would say, we were attacked by radical Islamic terrorists, and then present a plan for defeating them. A plan that would unify the country, a plan that would bring together our allies, and let Americans know not only that he was going to keep them safe from ISIS, but there was a commander-in-chief who recognized this problem and who was going to bring together all of our military force, the force of our allies, to defeat ISIS, because we recognize that they represent a threat not only to the United States of America, but also to our allies all over the world.
Right, and you bring up a great point that President Obama, in his speech, even though he talked about Muslims, even though he talked about radicalization, he did not use the term radical Islamic terrorist. He hasn't recognized that that is where the threat stems from, and he won't use that phrase. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think you have to have a commander-in-chief who recognizes a problem, who recognizes the threat, who recognizes that this is radical Islamic terrorism. And you also have to have a president at the same time who brings the country together to face that threat that he's identified. You know, after World War II, FDR didn't focus on domestic politics. After 9/11, George W. Bush didn't focus on domestic politics. What they did is they brought the country together to face a threat that we were all facing. Unfortunately, the president, not only has he not called it radical Islamic terrorism, he said that ISIS is JV. He said that the ISIS was contained when they weren't. He called Paris a setback. He thinks of Iran as one of our friends rather than a country that's looking to destroy Israel and whose leaders chant death to America. We need to have a president who recognizes the threat and then brings Americans together to defeat that threat.
I completely agree. And until we do have someone in the Oval Office, a president who recognizes that these terrorists are motivated by their radical Islamic beliefs, our country and our allies around the world will still be in danger. We'll be under threat of them attacking us here at home. Eric, I thank you again for coming on the program. And as always, thank you for your service to our country.